September 15, 2016.
We still have people signing in, but I think we'll go ahead and get started. This is the Meridian Park Neighborhood Association monthly meeting, but anyone is welcome to attend any of our programs. So come as often as you like. And before I introduce our program, Constance, the neighborhood coordinator, has an announcement.
Thank you, Rachel, and welcome everybody. As you probably know, this is a very busy week in City Hall, and this evening, as you were meeting up here, there is a meeting about the PROS plan, the Park Recreation and Open Space Plan, going on downstairs. And a lot of people, I think, have felt conflicted. It's like, this is the night if you could clone, you'd go to both. But I just wanted everybody to know that this is just one of many meetings with the PROS plan. There are more coming up. The next one will be in early January. All the information that's being presented tonight will be online, so you go to the city website and search PROS plan, and you will find everything that they're talking about tonight. There are two opportunities coming up soon. One will be both in December, a Parks Board meeting and a City Council meeting, where this information will also be presented. If those of you who have not signed up for our alert system, if you haven't done that, please do, because that is the best way to keep informed about what's going on here. So you go to our website and you can click on the alert system logo, which is up at the right-hand corner of our homepage, and you can sign up for a variety of different alerts, and suggest you sign up for all of them, actually, because you'll get information about police activity, about neighborhood activity, and what's going on in City Hall. So again, you will have plenty of opportunities still. This PROS plan won't finish up, and there won't be recommendations until after the middle of next year, so there's still plenty of time to have your input. And I thank you again for being here.
Well, as you all know, our meeting tonight is on being prepared, disaster preparedness. And our speaker is our new emergency preparedness director for the city of Shoreline. He's been here about 6 months now.
Since March, so pushing 7 months. Yeah, long time.
So at this point, I'd like to introduce Brian Dixon. Thank you.
Well, first off, thank you for having me. We have a large crowd in a small room tonight, so I'm going to ask that I know we have a lot of questions about a lot of different things. I want to try and get through the material because I know that the Meridian Park Neighborhood Association wants to talk about a few other things, so I want to give them the chance to be able to do their regular monthly business as well. But so I'm going to start out by asking everybody that's in the Meridian Park neighborhood, if you could just raise your hand. What are the boundaries? What are the boundaries?
Good question.
185th, 165th, Aurora, and the freeway.
Actually, all weekend 160.
Right, 160th, I stand corrected.
So the reason I'm asking that is we have a lot of people from different parts of Shoreline here tonight. And I want to encourage everyone that's come from a different neighborhood that you go back to your own neighborhood association and ask them to invite me to come talk at your neighborhood association as well. It's really important that I'm able to talk to everybody in Shoreline. But thank you for coming tonight. I really appreciate it. To start out, I usually try and give a little introduction to myself. As was mentioned, I've been here since March. Before that, I was a county emergency management director in Nebraska. And as you can imagine, Nebraska and Shoreline are a little bit different. But I had some major obstacles out there. And my county was 640 square miles. 8,000 people lived in that county. It was extremely rural. It took me an hour and a half to get from one side of the county to the other, going 75 miles an hour. So, a little bit different. We bordered Missouri and Kansas, so big changes in jurisdictional boundaries. The Missouri River went right through my county. The only fault line in Nebraska went through my county. In addition, we had Bakken crude coming through our county with pipelines and trains. We also had a nuclear power plant. So you start adding these things together, our emergency operations center on average activated 3 times a month for hazardous material spill, a flood, a tornado, blizzards, 911 outages, you name it, we did it. So when I came to Shoreline, they said, how can you, as someone who served a population of 8,000 people, serve a population of over 55,000? And I said, do you have a nuclear plant? Do you have the second largest river in the United States going through here? Do you have tornadoes? And I said, Shoreline has hazards. Where I came from had hazards. That's what I do. I take what hazards do we have and what can we do to be more resilient in our communities, be better prepared in our communities. And that's all I want to do, because that's all I can do. I can't stop a huge Cascadia earthquake from happening. Nothing Brian Dixon is gonna do will make that not happen or happen. You know, whatever you believe in, higher power or not, that, I can say that's out of your control, I'm sorry. If you thought that stopping earthquakes was in your control. What is in your control though, is what you do personally and what you do with your neighbors and what you do in your community. So, before Nebraska, I grew up in Portland, Oregon. So I am not new to the Northwest. I was a special operations paramedic down there. So I did water rescue, mountain rescue, canyon rescue, anything like that. I got deployed to Katrina, Rita, Gustav, most recently Sandy. I worked in the Atlantic City Super Shelter, where I was in charge of all the overnight operations there. We had over 500 people in one shelter. My staff there said they'd rather go to the Superdome than what was happening in Atlantic City. So that's my little plug of, no matter where disaster happens, bad things can happen afterwards if you're not prepared. And Atlantic City was far from prepared. Just like New Orleans was not prepared. If you're not prepared, a bad situation will get much, much worse. So, that kind of leads me into what I want to talk about tonight. So, when I came to Shoreline, we had this massive drill that had been planned for years. And I came to Shoreline and said, okay, where are we at? They said, we have a drill in 2 months. And I said, great, where are we at? We have a drill in 2 months. And I said, okay, time to get going. And I will readily admit that we had some great things happen. We had some not so great things happen. But the not so great things happen, I was glad to see that we were able to get through that. The people in this city, either paid staff here at the city or volunteers like our CERT or communication volunteers, were able to work through it all. So they had the hiccups, but can't expect them not to. I'm talking about a 9.0 earthquake that lasts for 5 whole minutes, which is a huge amount of time. And then a subsequent tsunami, after aftershock, after tsunami, after aftershock, just keeps going. Putting anybody in that situation and say, hey, fix this, that is a tall order. But we did really well. But one of the things I did notice is a few things that we need to work on. And one of that is a preparedness gap that I noticed. And I wanted to talk to you guys about it because I think I have a great solution that fits Shoreline very, very well. So, when I was looking at the different programs and the different things that have been promoted in Shoreline throughout the years, I kind of came up with two big things. There's this personal preparedness here. And I'm sure a lot of you have heard, 3 days, 3 ways, 72-hour kit, to make it through ready.gov. And everybody's heard of those. And the whole concept of those programs is each person needs to take some sort of initiative themselves to be prepared. Whether that be, have this massive kit or just having extra food and water stored away in case something bad happens. There's whole different levels of it. Next thing I noticed was this neighborhood preparedness. What this is the Map Your Neighborhood programs. Seattle has the SNAP, Seattle Neighborhoods Actively Prepare. Basically the concept is, okay, I feel like I'm prepared at home, but I have certain limitations, whether that be physical, financial limitations, or just realistic, limitations of I cannot build a bomb shelter in my home. And that's just not gonna happen. But my neighbor over here, they got a bomb shelter. So I'm gonna be best friends with that guy. But a little more realistic here. It's, if I'm here and I have a certain skill set or certain capabilities, but I know the guy that lives across the street has, a chainsaw because that's what he does for a living, because he's a lumberman. And, the lady who lives next to me is a nurse. Everybody in my immediate neighborhood on my block has certain skill sets that, together we can be even more resilient. So these two programs are really good. But it really got me thinking, okay, is that it? And we noticed a gap. I talked a little bit about my experience at Katrina and Sandy. We all know about the Japanese earthquake and tsunami that happened. One of the biggest things that came out of that is all this individual preparedness has been pushed out. All this, the neighborhood preparedness that I talked about has been pushed out. But there really hasn't been a after that. So in these big scale disasters like a Katrina, Sandy, the tsunami in Japan, one of the biggest things that people may or may not be aware of is certain things that we're used to in our current day and age will not be there. And they could not be there for weeks, months. Power. People in this world do not understand how everything that they do in their life now is dependent on power. Your utilities, your phone. That's great. If I have full coverage, that's wonderful. If I have no way to charge this, it's a brick and it's useless to me. How much of my life is now on this phone? I can remember my mom's phone and maybe my brother's. That is it. I don't have to remember phone numbers anymore. I don't have to remember what I'm doing tomorrow because I get an alert. Everything in my life is on this piece of hardware here. And if I can't have a way to power it, I'm out. 911 service. One of the interesting facts is most people, I think it's close to 75% of the population, now don't have landlines. They have cell phones. So if the cell phone network is down or overloaded, or our phones start dropping power, how are you gonna call 911? I mean, I'm old enough to remember how to go to a payphone. Who knows where a payphone is around here? They used to be on every other corner. now I have no idea where one even is. So, you know, that limitation is there. One, the other thing is city services. In a disaster, the city's gonna be dealing with disaster stuff. So normal city functions are not gonna exist. That includes if, you know, a light is out or, you know, a storm drain is backed up, we might not be able to get to it for a long time. And that might affect you. You know, if there's a storm drain backed up and it's flooding your backyard, if we're pulling people out of rubble, I'm sorry. You know, I'm sorry that your backyard is flooding. It's just, we can't get to it. The big one here though, groceries. How many people still use cash for everything at the grocery? Yeah, not a single person. We all use a card of some sort. Power's out, how are we gonna use that? Internet's down. Card goes through the internet now when you swipe it. How are you gonna buy groceries? Power's out at the grocery store, they're not gonna even let you in. It's too much of a liability nowadays. So how are you gonna buy groceries? Gas stations. No power equals no gas. So people that have little portable generators, that's great, but if you don't have fuel to go with it, you got another brick. If you wanna leave, go somewhere, drive to go get help, you have what's in your tank. When I was out in Sandy, I was lucky that I was working with government, cause I gotta go to special gas stations that were in high security areas, and it still took me an hour and a half to get through security to get gas. Everybody else was up to 2 days waiting in line to get a max of 2.5 gallons fuel. 2.5 gallons is not gonna get you very far. And even with a, you know, hybrid, you have an electric vehicle. You got a huge paperweight. So, talked a little bit about personal preparedness. Then we go into neighborhood. So, the question is, what's next? So the solution. We need to figure out a place that people can walk to. That's a natural gathering place for people to go. That they can talk to the city with other locations and amongst the people that live in that area. And they can also ask for assistance. So, if you're at home and it's been 3 or 4 days with the power out, your phone doesn't work anymore, your TV hasn't worked, your food is spoiling in the fridge, what now? That's the question that I asked. What are people supposed to do? Where are they supposed to go to get help? So, I came up with this HUD program. The concept of this HUD program is we choose locations, natural gathering places that are chosen by the community members. Where can you go to get help? Where can you go to get information? And what I want to encourage, this whole program depends on the community deciding where these places are gonna be with me. It's not my, if I choose, hey, the Fred Meyer over here, that's gonna be it. And no one ever, it's like, no, we're not going to the Fred Meyer. It's useless. I want a place that people naturally go within a certain radius, a walking radius, so no more than 3/4 of a mile. So we're talking about quite a few of these hubs. When we talk about rolling these out, I'd say, you know, it's gonna be based on need and involvement. So when I started out, I asked everybody that's not in the Meridian Park neighborhood to go back to your neighborhood association and say, hey, we need to talk about this. Because I want to be able to say, hello neighborhood, let's talk about some places. So for Meridian Park, I'll ask you, where are natural points in your neighborhood that people naturally go? With the caveat being no fire stations, because hopefully firefighters are not at the fire station in a disaster. Hopefully they're out doing their job, pulling people out or assisting. So it's no help to go into an empty building. 2, no schools. That's a touchy subject for some people, because I know schools are a natural gathering place. However, there's been a lot of data out there that suggests keeping schools open for school kids helps their psychology so much. It helps the parents so much. I'm a parent, I have 2 girls. One's almost 9, one's 6. They are a handful. If I don't have to worry about where they're at and their safety while I'm trying to put my home back together, that is huge for me. It's huge for my girls to be able to go to their school where they know that building, their friends are there, and even if school's not in session, they can hang out at the gym all day. It helps them have some sort of normalcy in their lives. Helps me as a parent get my life back in order. And I'm not as dependent on everybody else around me. If I'm able-bodied, able to help. I love my kids dearly, but I got priorities. And finding food and shelter, that's a priority. So, getting back to what we're talking about. So, where's a good place? Yeah.
Right here.
Church.
That's what I'm wondering about, like, there's an enormous church that's down at the corner of, Meridian and 175th. But it's a church that has a lot of members from out of even the city of Shoreline.
Yeah.
So they would have to be enrolled in, becoming
So I'll talk
a
about
hot
that.
member of that.
Yeah.
And then we have a medical clinic right here in our neighborhood.
Yes. So I'll talk about both of those. So, said churches. Shoreline has more churches per capita than any other area in the Seattle area.
Wow, that's weird.
We are church heavy. Regardless of what religion you believe in, they all have one common thing. They like to help people. To me, that's win-win. We got a lot of people that want to help a lot of people. So, what I've already approached the church associations, saying, hey, let's identify some places that might be good places. And when I talk to each neighborhood, I'm gonna bring that up. But it doesn't have to be churches. It can be a park. It can be a Fred Meyer. It could be any place that naturally people go, that they have access to.
But you said you eliminated schools. Are you including community colleges and university in schools?
Yes. And that, it's mostly because they're their own system. Now if Shoreline Community College, I work really well with their emergency manager. If they wanna get in on this and the neighborhood surrounding the college feels that that's a good place, then by all means, I'll approach it. One caveat to the schools is the 2 high schools. I would like to see them retain their ability to be a mass shelter if need be, if they're still standing. High school students, I would hope, can be able to help. I'm hoping high school age students can say, hey, I'm gonna help my community. The focus on getting kids back to school are elementary and middle school students that we all know they're just not able-bodied enough usually to help in a disaster scenario.
Explain a little bit more about this hub, because some of the reading that I've done is just just a church, and, they may not have any supplies, so I may not, in other words, I'd have to want to go there, and in a disaster, I'd only want to go there if I'm gonna get something that's going to help me
Yeah.
get,
I'll get to what you're saying at the end of what I'm doing here.
Okay.
But that's a good question, we'll answer that. Do you have another question?
I had a place that I was thinking of and I forgot it.
It's okay. Remember it, write it down, and we'll talk about it.
When you say Shoreline over and over, are you including Lake Forest Park? Are you available?
So I am not the emergency manager for Lake Forest Park. However, I will say that this hub concept, and we'll get into that a little bit,
Valid anyway.
it's valid anyway. So, right here,
I think-
hubs shouldn't limit who goes. You know, these hubs are based on topography and location. So if Meridian Park says, here's where we're gonna put our first hub, if it is on the corner of one of their borders, or the topography such is that, you know, there's hills, and it's a lot easier for people to go downhill than it is up a hill, they're gonna have people from outside their neighborhood. I-5, Aurora, if something horrible happens and we have people from outside the area, those people might go to one of these hubs to start out with, just by word of mouth. The people in Shoreline are gonna say, yeah, we know where to go, come with me.
What's the critical mass, in terms of body count that you're thinking about per hub? In other words, is it too small to have like a home on a street be a hub for that street, or I don't know the scope that you
Yeah,
have in
so
mind.
a hub is gonna be 10 to 15 blocks. So, and it's not a shelter. It is a meeting point. And we'll get in, when I discuss some of his questions, I think a lot of yours will be answered. So we'll get there. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, one gathering place might be the library at 175th and then down at
Yeah,
library might be a good place.
yeah, I have a map downstairs where I've been slowly putting dots, and as we get closer to figuring out exactly where we wanna reach out, we'll start seeing which one's gonna be a good one, but let me get a little further in this, and then hopefully some of your questions will be answered, cause I know you
Yeah,
guys have a lot of them.
What about the courthouse?
It's possible. It's owned by King County though, so,
Because Cromwell Park.
yeah, so the park. Park is a good spot, so, who's gonna be at these hubs? I know that was brought up a little bit. The big part for this is, I'm looking for 5 to 10 people per hub that wants to take ownership of this hub. They're gonna be having to live hopefully nearby, that's the whole idea of this concept. They're gonna be made up of community members, property owners, so if it is like a Fred Meyer, you know, if we're utilizing their parking lot, we wanna have somebody that's representing that facility available to talk to us. We're also gonna have neighbor association members. We're gonna have our community emergency response team, or CERT members that live within that area, and our amateur radio members that live within that area. And so kinda to get more to what you were asking, what Seattle has done is they've rolled this program out a couple years ago. And they have 2 great examples for us. Both of them are in the north end of Seattle. One is at Lake City, Fred Meyer, and the other one's at a Lutheran church, I think on 140th, over north of Greenwood. So we have a private business that's supporting one, and we have a church that's supporting another. The one that's over at the Fred Meyer, they have a container, a shipping container that they painted. It sits in the parking lot. It has chairs, tables, tents, signage, has radios in it, has basic medical supplies in it. And the community members, that 5 to 10, they go there every few months, open it up, make sure everything still looks good. Once a year, they do a drill where they pull everything out. They get a lot of their CERT teams and their other volunteers together, and they pretend they're having a disaster. So that's what turns into the meeting point. People come there because they know they can get information, they can get the help that they need, at least request for it. You know, if somebody's having a medical issue, you know, and 911 doesn't work, what are you gonna do? If you know that this place exists and people will be there with radios that can contact the fire department, you're gonna wanna go there. So, the church, the Lutheran church over there on north of Greenwood, has a similar approach. They have a drop box that you see at like a construction site, like a toolbox, one of the big huge ones. And they have some of their stuff in that, but then they use a room in the church where they keep their, you know, all their supplies. And the concept is that we don't wanna overload the, you know, a church or a Fred Meyer. So we have some of the stuff outside, some of it inside, because we don't know if an earthquake happens, if the building will still be there. But usually a shipping container sitting out on a concrete pad, you're gonna be okay. But yeah, you have tents, have blankets, emergency warming blankets, you know, basic supplies to help people out. Is it gonna be everything everybody needs? No. We don't have the resources for that. But what it is a place where people can go. So, scenario, we have a big earthquake. It's been 3 days since the earthquake. Power's been out, you're running out of food and water. I'm working in the Emergency Operations Center for the city. And I have a call from one of the hubs saying, we have people here, we're running out of water. I can say, okay. I can contact the county, the state, the military, and say, I need a large shipment of water to this point. And I can send it directly to that hub, because I know where the location is. I'm in communication with the people at that hub. And then the volunteers that are working at that hub can then distribute the water to the people that live in the area. And that goes with all kinds of resources. If I need food, if I need medical teams, those are gonna be the primary distribution point for that neighborhood. So yeah, it is gonna be part meeting place. It's gonna be part resource place. The big idea is that it's a location where I can, in the Emergency Operations Center, be able to contact people in the community and make sure that you guys are getting what you need. Does that answer some of the questions so far? We'll keep going, but.
I'm just curious, who are the CERT members? Are they professionally trained emergency response people, or are they people?
Woohoo, I'm a CERT!
So Pat here is the president of our CERT. So if you wanna just give a quick, what CERT is real quick?
Community Emergency Response Team is 24 hours of training at no expense to the trainees. We conduct it right over at the fire station here, and it's what I like to call firefighter light. So you're trained in search and rescue, firefighting, medical operations, lifting, cribbing, how to get someone out from underneath something. It's real basic stuff, but it's 24 hours of class time. And you get registered, you get an ID card.
Basically, the whole point of it is to have someone at these facilities that can do basic first aid, has basic knowledge of how disasters work, basic knowledge of how the city responds in a disaster, and can be that kind of go-to person between the city and each one of these hubs. We speak the same lingo. And that idea is, you know, if somebody comes up to one of these hubs and say, hey, I have an elderly parent, or I have a sick, you know, person at my house, or, you know, I need help. You know, we might not have paramedics or EMTs available, but, you know, and that kind of goes in line with the medical clinic here. The people that work in the medical clinic might not live in Shoreline. Probably don't, most of them. That facility may or may not be usable after a disaster. But what I'm gonna do as an emergency manager is if I find, okay, I have medical people, I'm gonna be sending them to these hubs. Grab some gear and go. Grab what you can. And the CERT members are gonna help that medical person out. And they're basically gonna be extra hands that have a little bit more training than the average person and can help stabilize the situation.
Just, I'm not certain, but
Yeah.
you and I had a conversation and I found, in the spring, Lake Forest will have their training.
They're having it now.
Oh,
And we're gonna be having ours in the spring.
Oh, okay, good.
So as we get a little bit closer, you're gonna start seeing some information on if you wanna become a CERT, what that entails. Doesn't entail a lot. You have to pass a background check, make sure you're not a bad person, and go to the classes.
Was that like about 6 or 8 Saturdays?
It's
6, I think.
We run, well, it's 24 hours of training. We have an extra class in there that we teach something that's really not on the CERT curriculum. It's animal rescue. So we have Washington animal rescue people come and teach dog CPR and other things like that. And then it's typically Tuesday nights from 7 to 10 p.m. And I like to run one all-day Saturday class. And we knock out all the medical stuff on one day, but it's a whole day. But then again, I'm a volunteer teaching this stuff, and so sometimes it can be hard for me to find the time to be able to come out and do that teaching. So I try and make the class as work so that everyone can participate and get all the time that they need there. It's a good class.
That definitely is a good class, so. We'll move on a little bit here just cause, this is kinda just a continuation. This is a nice little visual for some people that, this is our next step, is this hub. So, talked a little bit about this, but what is next? We just did kind of a very, very high, airplane view of what this whole program is. So what are we planning on doing next? I'm gonna be starting to talk to each neighborhood, seeing who would be interested in becoming these hub people. Who wants to be involved with making this hub happen? We're gonna start discussing where do we want them, narrowing down those locations. Establishing that core group for each location. We're gonna start talking about policies and procedures. What do you want each hub to do? How is it going to work? Each one of these is going to be unique. That's the whole idea. We want this to fit the community that it's in. We're gonna take a shell and a template of what a hub is, but it's up to each location to figure out how exactly do they want this to run. If it's on private property or at a church, there's gonna be some agreements that need to be made. Making sure that, a church understands that if we are sending people there, who's liable for what? Is the church in charge still? Is the city in charge? Are the volunteers that are there in charge? So there's that legal side that goes into it. That's what the cities provide, that legal part. The equipment. The city's gonna be able to provide some of the equipment. But since each one's different, with different people, with different capabilities, each hub is gonna have to decide, do we want extra equipment more than the city's able to provide? If so, how do we get that equipment? Do we have a bake sale? Or some kind of fundraiser to purchase a few extra pieces of equipment to make our hub more resilient and more solid. Big part of what I'm gonna be doing with the neighborhood associations is doing our entire public outreach. I've had a lot of people call me in the last few months, hey, can I get some pamphlets on this? Can I get some information on that? Website looks kinda old, your name isn't even on it. And I say, yeah, cause I'm clean washing that thing, starting over. What I wanna do is have one brochure that explains that little graphic that I showed you, the personal preparedness to the community preparedness to the hub preparedness. That has each one defined. And then on the back, it's gonna talk about how to become certain, how to be involved with the amateur radio, where to find additional information, what websites are out there. So.
It seems like also kind of rolled into this, there needs to be the recognition that Shoreline is rapidly changing right now.
Yes.
Like there's the rapid change in the population, people moving in, people moving out, people moving around within
Yeah,
Shoreline.
and so a lot of that public outreach is gonna be, I think I have it on here, a slide. One of the things I said is, where do we need it the most? And the city recently hired a diversity and inclusion coordinator, whose whole purpose of their job is to take these people that are moving in or already exist, how do we get them into the city and a community? So as an emergency manager, I'm looking at, when we do these hubs, where are cultural hubs also? We have a large non-English speaking community. How do I reach out to them? So I'm working with that person to identify those. In Seattle has what they call, they're now called hubs. They had a bunch of different names, but they're all rolled it into hubs. But if you look at a map of their hubs down in South Seattle, they have one like every 3 blocks. So I asked them when I met with them, I'm like, okay, that's a lot. And they said, well, they're cultural too. So you might have a neighborhood hub, 3 blocks away you have a cultural hub. Next to 3 blocks away, another cultural hub. It's because the people in that community, you know, there might be a community center or a, you know, one example is there's an Ethiopian community center down in South Seattle. So that community center said, well, we wanna have a hub for all the people in our community. And those people don't necessarily live within that half-mile, 3/4 mile zone. But that's where they go. So they're a little more willing to travel a little bit farther to get to that, because that's where their family is. Their cultural family is at that location. And so that's part of their culture, is to seek that out. So what I'm gonna be looking at here in Shoreline is, what needs do we have here? So, sorry, my mouse keeps went out. So here's a slightly interactive slide, but it kinda shows how this whole hub program is gonna roll out. Huge caveat here. I just put these willy-nilly, not representative of how we're gonna start, where we're gonna put any of these, but it's just to show you that we're gonna start with 1, go to 2, go to 3, and we'll start putting it in different places throughout the city. We can't just put all these out all at once. It's gonna be a process. The little handout I gave out, you know, at the bottom it says, you know, I'm hoping to have 2 to 4 of these next year. I mean, that's a lot of work to get 2 to 4 of these set up. I'm hoping to have about 10 when we start. So it's gonna take a couple years. So, you know, when we start this out, it might be, you know, I might say, hey, this neighborhood, I know you really want one, but I can't have 4 of these on one side of the interstate and none on the other. Or I can't have 4 of these in the Ballinger area and nothing at Briarcrest, or nothing at Ennisarn. You know, I gotta be able to spread these out a little bit. So, now, your question again.
Well, it's slightly different. Just in terms of funding, you mentioned, doing, bake sales for extra equipment.
Yeah.
Where is funding coming from for, what has been allotted and where is that coming from?
So right now, what we're looking at is the general emergency management budget. We're looking at doing some base equipment. And the idea for utilizing the emergency management budget, I have a line item for just emergency preparedness in the community. So what I wanna do is make sure that we're taking tax dollars from everybody in the community. I wanna make sure everybody in the community gets a benefit. So that means that I need to figure out what are the base line equipment. So I'm looking at a shipping container. I can get a used one, get it painted, make sure it's all secure, like $2,000. It's pretty economical. So if I can fund that out of my budget, that's a huge piece in this whole system. If I can get some tables, some signage, things like that, and I can provide that at each one of these, out of this budget, then that's great. What I'm hoping for though, and I'll be honest with you, so I'm hoping after we roll out the first couple of these, that you, as citizens of Shoreline, can go to the city council and say, hey, we like this. We want to fund this more. We want you to make preparedness in our communities a priority. So that I can say, hey, I used to be only to provide this piece of this, I can provide this now. And we can make this better. Cause I just can't provide everything at these places. But I can provide the baseline. I can provide enough that it will work.
For how many hubs?
For up to 10. And like I said, it's gonna be rolled out over years. So I'm hoping 2 to 4 for the first year, 4 the second year. So within 3-4 years, we should have these all up and going. Any other questions? I know that we talked a lot about a lot of stuff.
It's probably a silly question, but how are you gonna keep all these, units and storage areas safe from, theft?
So it's like anything, if someone wants to steal something, they're gonna steal it. There's nothing I can do to stop that. But I wanna put these in a place that kind of symbolizes this as part of the community. So one thing I suggested is, paint it whatever you want as a community, I'll put a little sign on it that, a sign, a steel sign that says, this is a hub location, don't touch, yada, 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 call the police. But I wanna make it more of a community-centered piece. When you start doing that and get the community involved, people that are gonna wanna mess with it goes down. Community itself's gonna watch it. We're gonna know it's there. Police are gonna know it's there. So I can't guarantee that it won't be broken into. Can't guarantee anything's not gonna be broken into. We have storage outside City Hall here. It gets broken into every once in a while. It's the world we live in. It sucks. But I'm hoping to discourage. That's about all I can do.
Given your experience with Sandy and some of the other tragedies, do you come away with any very brief list of things that people wish they had done before these events occurred? Cash to keep on hand,
Yeah.
et cetera?
I'm hoping with this new public outreach whole thing that, well, I'm not hoping, there will be a list. And I'm hoping to prioritize that list with the assumption that, that's my perspective and the perspective of what's commonly agreed upon. I know that there are differing levels of what people consider prepared for. I personally have a backpack with all kinds of weird stuff in it. You know, but it's mostly because when I'm confronted with a disaster, I am somewhere doing a job. So my preparedness level is gonna be different than anybody else's. Food and water, those are the big things. You can go to Fred Meyer and pick up a gallon of water for less than $1. And if you do that every time you shop, you can acquire a lot of water pretty quickly for fairly cheap. Rice, beans, honey, don't expire. As long as they're kept in a dry, cool, dark place, they won't expire. Those are, you know, honey's a little more expensive, but beans and rice are fairly cheap. So if you get, you know, 5 pounds of rice, 5 pounds of beans, you got carbs and protein. Mix it with water.
Are we gonna
As long as you
cook
can
rice?
cook it.
You don't even have to cook it. You can just let it soak in the water. You can eat it cold. It's not tasty. That's what the honey's for. So, you know, you can do this on a shoestring budget. You can also go out and, I mean, there's tons of websites. You can buy, you know, a whole case of freeze-dried meals that are, you know, make astronauts wish they could eat, but.
See, on Cairo, coast to coast, they advertise that once in a while.
Yeah.
They have food that like for $100, they have quite a few portions of meal
Yeah.
out of that, and it's good for 25 years.
I would say the term 25 is probably stretching it, just because they say MREs last forever. MREs have a shelf life of like 8 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, about 8 years. So, you know, I've had those, I've eaten them.
Yeah.
They're not bad. They're sure is a lot better than cold rice and beans with a little honey mix.
Well, I'm just gonna say though that, I mean, we eat and, you know, we feel satisfied when we have our meals every day.
Yeah.
But if you get hungry, I mean, really, really hungry, things like that, I'll bet would taste really quite good when you're hungry.
I mean, anybody that's gone camping knows that, you know, by day 4 where you're kind of running out of your stuff, I mean, you get creative, and then when you get back to civilization, you know, that burger tastes amazing.
Yeah.
So yeah, you know, if you're hungry, especially if you're working hard in a post-disaster setting, you're gonna be burning a lot of calories. I mean, MREs are, you know, 3,000-4,000 calories for a reason. Because you're working hard. So, yes.
Some people might not know what MRE is.
So meal ready to eat, that's what the military uses. It is a lot of calories. And the concept is that it's a little bag about that tall, about like that. And it has what used to be considered never perishable food, but yeah, it's about 8 years, because I've opened old MREs and but it's little packages of freeze-dried or vacuum-sealed food that you can eat right out of the container. So, kind of looks like wet dog food. I haven't eaten wet dog food before, but it has the same kind of smell to it too. But, you know, you can have, my kid, you know, I take the ones that are about to expire when we go hiking. I'm like, hey, here. She thinks the pork loin, you know, which is horrible looking, she thinks that's the coolest thing ever. She loves it, so.
Yeah, one thing is, like, if you have a barbecue, you could collect a whole bunch of canisters, so you could eat your food that way.
Yeah, I mean, people get really creative with those different meals, so. Yes, sir.
What kind of, you need to take this out of a horror show, but what kind of disasters are being thought about?
So, our big ones here in Shoreline are, I go from most common to most catastrophic and less common. Most common are power outages from windstorms. You guys know that. Second comes any kind of severe weather, whether that be snow, ice. Don't forget heat though, too. You know, if we have, you know, a lot of hot days in a row, that starts messing with our power grid. You know, people turning on air conditioners and just the way that power works in a grid, it starts getting depleted on those really hot days. Those are the big ones. Second comes, you know, any type of earthquake, and then followed by, you know, we can have urban wildfires here. I mean, especially coming off near down by the water, you know, coming up, if it's been dry for a long time, we can get fires coming in. And everybody's houses live close enough to trees where, you know, that fire can spread pretty quickly. Then we start looking at the bigger things, such as the Seattle fault, Whidbey Island fault, where we have a good 7+ earthquake. That's gonna hurt us. Obviously, we're looking at volcanoes, got Rainier. That one is gonna not damage us, but the issues that happen regionally are gonna affect Shoreline really, really bad. Power is gone. Roads are missing. Just transportation and infrastructure is gonna be damaged in the region, and so that's gonna affect us here. The biggest one is the Cascadia. Does everybody know what Cascadia is? It's been in the news a ton. That is gonna be the big one. And while scientists say, you know, Shoreline will be, you know, not gonna come falling down, or it's all gonna be flat, that doesn't scare me as much as what's gonna happen regionally. You know, when we just talked about, you know, Mount Rainier going. Cascadia goes, the current estimation for restoring utilities is a year plus.
Wow. So what is Cascadia?
Cascadia, there's a huge fault line off the coast of Oregon, Washington, and British Columbia. About every 250 years, it has a 9.0 earthquake. We are pretty overdue for that. And it happens pretty regularly every 250 years. And they, you know, scientists that have said, you know, they estimate it's gonna be 5 minutes. Now, challenge you guys, just do this, like 30 seconds. And you're like, wow, that's a long time. Imagine not being able to stand at all for 5. And that's just the initial earthquake. We have aftershocks after aftershock after aftershock. It's gonna hit. You know, no power, no water, no transportation, nothing. For up to a year. That's, in my definition book, that's a catastrophic world as we know it ending event. There is absolutely nothing I can do to prepare anybody for that. I can't tell, hey, everybody here, make sure you have a helicopter with enough fuel to get you out of here and head over to the Midwest. It's not gonna happen. You know, because that's what it's gonna turn into. So that is from, you know, being without power for a couple days due to a windstorm to, I hope you all have a nice life. That's what I think about.
But there may be.
There's so much in between, and the realism is.
I mean,
Yeah.
terrorists, nuclear.
Yeah, probably anything like terrorism or nuclear. The biggest thing would probably be an EMP, which is an electrical magnetic pulse, which would be just as devastating probably as a Cascadia event. For those that don't know what an EMP is, it's when a nuclear device detonates up in the atmosphere and it fries all electrical circuits for like hundreds and hundreds of miles. So think about what has an electrical circuit in it. Everything. Planes will fall out of the sky. Every car going down the freeway will shut off all at the same time. People that have pacemakers, those pacemakers don't work anymore.
Uh-oh.
Um,
Sorry, why will the cars, just because the electricity within the cars, it's
The
gonna?
computer chips, electrical chips,
Oh,
fried.
wow.
So, and that'll be horrible.
What did you call that again?
EMP. Happens two ways. It can happen through a nuclear bomb, or it can happen from the sun, solar flare. Coronal mass ejection. And it's happened before. With sometime in the early 1800s, there was a big one, and it fried all the electrical components on the East Coast. Now, for granted, back in the 1800s, it was telegraph, but all the telegraph stopped. I mean, the whole telegraph system nationwide had to be replaced. It was from a solar flare. It's happened before. It will happen again. We're trying, as a community of emergency management, we're doing our best. But the big thing, all this boils down to is if you want to live, you have to take precautions yourself. Because if planes are literally falling out of the sky, there is absolutely nothing I can do to help you. And nothing that anybody else around you can help you unless it's out of the goodness of their own heart. So that's my very scary story. But, we can't live in fear. So I'm gonna answer your question first.
Brian, when
Yeah.
was the last Cascadia?
1700,
Okay.
so it should have hit in 1950.
We're kind of overdue on that.
We're overdue. So,
So.
What did it wipe out?
Oh, okay,
what's that?
I said, what did it wipe out at the time, the Cascadia in 1700?
Well, in 1700, there really wasn't much here in Washington or Oregon, besides the native tribes. You can Google the ghost forest in Washington. Down along the coast, there's just forests that are just all dead trees. That's from when all the salt water came in, killed them all, from the tsunami wave. There's some pretty good, Oregon Public Broadcasting, which is PBS down in Oregon, they did an amazing documentary on it, and it's free online. So, watch it. It's very well done. It's what Cascadia Rising, but they discuss the ghost forest in that documentary. Yes, sir.
So your goals for the next 6 to 8 months to get this thing off the ground?
Yes. So, right now, I'm talking to neighborhood associations, such as Meridian Park here. Those who do not live in Meridian Park, please go talk to your neighborhood associations. I would love to talk to them also. I will be in contact with Meridian Park to discuss if they want to get one of these up and going. It's up to you guys though. I'm not gonna force feed this because that's not how this works. So, by the end of 2017, I'm hoping to have 2 to 4 of these up and running.
So.
So you're gonna utilize certs as much as you can?
Yes.
Sort of, in terms of getting out into the neighborhoods, letting them know what you're trying to do?
Yeah, so that's gonna be my public outreach piece.
Okay.
Is going to be, just how you guys found out about this meeting. It's gonna be a lot of that. It's gonna be you guys talking to your neighbors. So it's word of mouth, grassroots. So, yes.
That's what I wanted to ask. So I'm planning on our street, like a very specific area that I'm planning, go door to door.
Yeah.
I'm aware of this brochure. Is there anything else you recommend that I?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Yeah,
Okay.
and that, like I said earlier, a lot of people have been asking me, what information can I go to my neighbors about? Unfortunately, because I'm redoing all this, a lot of the information was either out of date or I didn't want to put out because we're changing it in a few months.
So
So-
what would would you like us to say? Go knocking on a door, what's the gist of what to say
So,
at this stage?
did you get the little pamphlet or the little piece of paper that I handed out to everybody?
Oh.
You mean this one?
No, the full letter size. I got a bunch of them over
You
here.
mean the overview? Yes.
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 So that has a lot of topics, I mean, it's very brief, I get that, it's very much an overview. But that has the general idea of what this is. That can help you talk to your neighbors about it.
Okay.
Going to the city's website under emergency management, we have links to both the personal preparedness information and the map your neighborhood information, the community preparedness stuff. Those links are on there.
That's through this one, your name, Shoreline, Washington?
That's shorelinewa.gov.
Yeah, that's where we can go.
The city
to get
website,
that?
yes.
Okay,
And then at the bottom, there's my email and phone number,
yeah.
if you're wanting to start one
Oh,
up, so.
I
Where's
see.
the email?
At the very bottom there.
Very bottom, it's underlined.
Oh, this one here, okay.
Yes, sir.
How realistic is it to protect against EMP via Faraday cages or other such things?
I would say from what I know of, from what I've heard they work. I'm not an expert in that though, in magnetic pulses, so from what I've been told though, it's
So you put your computer in it or something?
yeah. A lot of people will, you know, you can get really small ones. Just put like a flash drive, a couple flash drives of, you know, important information. But, you know, most electronics require electricity, and if
Right.
electricity's out, then they won't work anyway, so.
Just somewhat related, a lot of people are getting into solar panels on their roofs. I understand though that if you have a sort of traditional solar panel thing and the main grid goes out, your solar panels don't do you any good. You have to have sort of disentangled solar panels that you can use on your own without any connection to the grid. And that, it may be something for people to be aware if that's even true. I understand it's true and poking around this a tiny bit. But a lot of people have the misconception that if you have solar panels and the power's out for a year, you can use your solar panels to heat your water and cook and stuff like that, but apparently not entirely true unless you have a system with some electronic switchers and stuff that
Well, yeah.
enables you to do it.
Transfer systems, so, you know, I could do a whole class on how solar, you know, and the grid works, but basically, most people have enough solar panels on their home to supplement their power usage. Not many people are completely off grid. So if you have a couple solar panels, if the power were to go out, having the capability to say, I'm gonna power this one room or these few appliances, that's your options usually. But you know, most people don't have enough solar panels to power their whole home, and if it is connected to the grid without a kill switch, it'll just drain out to the grid, and you won't be able to use it internally. Like I said, I could talk about that for a long time. And that's another class. So, any questions about anything we talked about, or? Yes?
Would you still recommend that people proceed with Map Your Neighborhood?
Yes, definitely.
There's a lot of
Yeah.
information.
Yeah, you know, like I said, this is the third tier of that. So I still really push personal preparedness. I really wanna still push getting to know your neighborhood and your immediate neighbors. And this is that next tier that we're rolling out. So they're all very intertwined at the end. I'm gonna go with you first.
This is embarrassing to even ask this, but
It's okay.
how many neighborhoods are there in Shoreline?
There are 14, yeah, sorry, thank
So
you.
you're thinking
Putting
of
me on the
10
spot.
That's okay, I was just thinking, you're thinking of 10 hubs, it just gives me an idea of,
Yeah, because, you know,
How
if
big
you
they
were to
are.
look at a neighborhood map, I mean, you look at like Briarcrest, it's kind of off down the corner, Ballinger's up in the corner, so those will probably have them. But then we start getting more into the middle, and, you know, you start looking at like Richmond Highlands is kind of this weird shape, Green Park's kind of long, North City's long, you know, so if I can hit, you know, the north-south end of two neighborhoods with one hub, and a hub over here, you know, it fits better to the topography.
Okay, so just look for a good solid hub.
Yeah,
Talk to
and
neighbors.
eventually the website will have it. I mean, you can go to the emergency management website and it'll say, you know, find your hub.
Right, but
And
if
you
we
can
wanted
click it
to
and-
start in our neighborhood,
Yeah,
just look for a good geographical place, talk to neighbors.
like I said, the natural
it to
place,
you.
what's a
Okay.
natural place that people go?
All right.
And
My question is about radio operators.
Yes.
You talked about CERT training being available. What kind of radio operator are you looking for?
so, amateur radio. So this is a very old kind of civil defense era capability. And when I talk about radio operators, these are people that, you know, traditionally have their own little radio system, maybe their own repeater, big antenna outside their house, and they can practice Morse code with Paris on really small wattage. Moved into more modern times here. We have people that have digital radios that can talk on pre-designated radios bandwidth. So, you know, like your FM radio goes from 88 to 107. These guys are before that and a little bit after that. And they can talk on these channels, and they can talk within close proximity, and they can talk across the state, across the country. So, yes,
The amateur radio license is what you need to be a radio operator. It's an FCC license. It is very inexpensive to get, and it's not very difficult to get, but you have to get the license. There are license courses given about every other month down in Ballard. There's an organization down there that's doing it very often. And you just have to go onto various websites, like there's a website called Mike and Key, which will tell you where there are license exams being given, where there are licensing classes being given. And then once you have your license, that opens up the permission to use the frequencies that Brian was talking about. And there are several frequencies, and the radio operators here in town are a very active group.
you know, there's
they
several,
meet
there's
also
over,
with
there's
our
over
house
100
once a month.
operators in Shoreline
In
already.
Shoreline already,
Yeah,
okay.
so these guys, you know, they work and they volunteer a lot for the city to make sure that our backup communication system will still work. Take maybe two more questions, then we probably need to wrap up for tonight. Okay, go ahead, sir.
I used to work off and on a little bit in Switzerland, and it's interesting to chat with folks there. We might consider Googling this a little bit, but my understanding is that most houses in Switzerland have to have a bomb shelter by code. And there's a lot of other things they do from a civil defense point of view. You'd be surprised, you're driving through freeways or things, whole walls, mountains that open up, and jet airplanes will come out and take off on the freeway that you didn't even know were there. But anyway, Switzerland is very, very advanced in a lot of this stuff, and a lot of people from Switzerland will tell you that in addition to their military rifle, which every adult male has to take home, they put their golf clubs and stuff in these little bomb shelters, and they kind of grin at them, but they have blast doors, they have all kinds of stuff. I mean, it's interesting. We might consider taking a look at that.
Yeah, it's trying to figure out the feasibility for that. You know, here in, you know, Shoreline, not gonna happen, just because it's different culture. So my approach to this is, what can we do? What are those bare things that will keep you alive a little bit longer? So that's my goal, and if we get to that, then we'll take that next step. So, it's hard to get people just to take that first step, though.
I'm thinking again more on the neighborhood level.
Yes.
You know, at this point. So are we to tell people that it's smarter to keep your personal stuff not in your house but in a shed, even if the shed's not on it, or not necessarily?
I would say to keep it in a place that is cool, not in, like, next to a window, and has climate control. So a shed doesn't have those. It's gonna get pretty cool in the winter, pretty hot in the summer, a lot of moisture. So yeah, if we have a major earthquake and a house comes down, yeah, I can't tell people what to plan for every scenario, unfortunately.
I mean, in rule of thumb, we have our pantry in the basement, is that a stupid idea?
Let's say it's stupid. You know, every house is different, so, you know, when I lived in Nebraska, I had stuff in the basement, because if a tornado comes, that's where you go. Even though we have the one fault line in Nebraska, then we're not gonna get a massive earthquake to where my house collapses. Here, that might be different. So I would put it in a place that you know you can get to. So where that is in your home, I can't say yes or no, because I could probably go through, no matter where you put it, tell you a scenario where you won't be able to get to it. So, okay, last question.
Well, I've got a lot of stuff in my car because I'm gone every day.
Yes.
And probably wouldn't be home if something happened anyway. So, just be sure you've got some stuff in your car.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I have good amount of stuff besides water. Don't keep water in your car, 'cause it'll freeze or get too hot. But
Where do you get the tablets to purify water?
Online.
yeah,
Where?
Amazon.
Oh,
Amazon's a great
Amazon,
place.
yeah.
Amazon?
So, anyway,
Mhm.
we'll do one
A
last.
lot of people know to keep emergency supplies in their car,
Yeah.
but oftentimes they completely forget flashlights and blankets.
Yeah. Yeah,
So that should be
you
on
can
the
buy a
list.
cheap blanket and just throw it in the back of your trunk.
I used one just the other day.
So,
She was-
anyway, I'm gonna let the neighborhood association kind of wrap things up, but I do wanna say thank you. Definitely please talk to people about it. And have a good evening.
It probably depends on how damaged your house was.
That's the thing,
You know,
I'm just trying to think like
we don't know
where's.
what kind of disaster we're gonna get.
I'm at this point, when he was saying, having the grate, that should be containers out on the cement thing, that's probably a good thing.
We each should have our own cement.
And make sure you just have at least 3 days supply of